Tonight, we're talking about the possible death of democracy and why I feel the Democrats have been cowardly. So I'm happy to have my guest here to help us get to the bottom of it. He's the senior advisor to the President of the United States and director of the White House Office of Public Engagement for Biden administration. Please welcome my guy, Mr. Cedric Richmond. Cedric, please stay.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're here, man. You know, we talked last year on Breakfast Club, and you said that if the Biden administration isn't holding up their end of the bargain, we can hold you personally responsible.
I did.
Do you still stand by that?
Absolutely.
Well, let's get right into it, all right? Black people got Biden elected, and we feel like he's not holding up his end of the bargain. What's happening, Cedric?
Well, first, let's start with a pandemic that's killed 1 in 600 black people in the country. So we're fighting every day to make sure we get vaccines out. We have them anywhere from barbershops to community health centers. But then the other part is we reduce black poverty in this country by 38% just this year with the child tax credit. We reduced black child poverty by 50% just this year. And then we did other stuff. We banned the use of private prisons. We banned the use of chokeholds. We limited the use of no-knock warrants. We put more black women on the appellate court than any president in the history of the United States. And this is day 281 for us. So, you know, where Congress is failing to act, we're doing it by executive order. So just last week, we convened meetings with families of people who were killed by police officers. We've convened civil rights leaders because we're going to do that by executive order also and go as hard as we possibly can, especially while the Senate and the House are not able to get together and pass something that's meaningful and comprehensive, and that's going to save lives.
So there was an executive order on police reform?
We did DOJ issued guidance, I guess it was about 4 weeks ago, to do the no-knock warrants and do the chokeholds. But they're
Why
also...
y'all quiet about that kind of stuff, though? That's the kind of stuff you should market loud. Like, you see how loud this studio is?
And you're right. But the truth is, we've been so busy with our head down and just trying to work. We're investigating 3 police departments right now. You have Louisville, Kentucky, you have Phoenix, and then you have Minneapolis, which are having pattern and practice. And Department of Justice charged 3 people in the death of Ahmaud Arbery. So we're working. And, you know, we probably could do a better job of telling everybody what we're doing. But at the same time, the stakes are so high in terms of trying to increase wages and save lives that we've just been doing the work.
Do you think Democrats are cowards?
No.
Okay, so why are y'all scared to get rid of the filibuster so y'all can properly legislate?
Well, you know, it's a simple math problem.
Okay.
You got to get to 50 in order to do that. And right now, the president has called for a talking filibuster, which is filibuster reform and would get you to a vote on the bill, a 50 vote. But we don't have the votes there yet. But
what's keeping y'all from the 50?
There are a couple.
Two. Say it.
I think it might be 3, but
Manchin, Sinema.
We are talking to senators about the talking filibuster because we know voting rights is important and we got to get it done. The president said it at the town hall.
Talk to me about that. How do 2 Democratic senators, right, Manchin and Sinema, seem to have more power than everyone else? And what does that say about where the real power is when 2 senators can dictate to the country what they want the president's agenda to be, Cedric? You know that's some BS.
Well, when you have 50 Democratic senators and you need each one, every one is their own president because you have to get 100% to get it moving. And, you know, Joe Manchin represents West Virginia. We lost West Virginia by 40 percentage points. We won Arizona, but, you know, at the end of the day, we're going to keep pushing and we're going to keep working with them because at the end of the day, we have to produce results. There are too many people, too many lives dependent on it. And so we're just going to keep working.
Do you think they should get rid of the filibuster?
Well, I think we have to reform it.
Okay.
And we have
Does that mean get rid of it?
Well, in its current form, absolutely.
Okay.
But what you will see is we have the John Lewis voting rights bill coming up in a week or so. And Manchin has signed on. We'll see if it's bipartisan. If it's not, the president said he's going to take a hard look at it. He's going to call people in, and then we'll make another assessment.
Let's talk about the infrastructure bill. Is that a win?
Absolutely.
Okay. Tell me what's in the bill that directly benefits black people.
Well, first of all, you have 10 million people in this country that still drink water that's coming through lead pipes.
That's a fact.
You have 400,000 schools and daycares that deliver water through lead pipes. Then you have broadband. So when these schools switch to virtual, there's so many little black kids and brown kids that were left behind because they don't have access to affordable internet. So if you talk about South Carolina, you talk about Louisiana, where governors have been hesitant to invest in their people and in their infrastructure, we're going to do it. So if you look at that, those are two things that really make a difference, not to mention all the climate stuff. But the other thing we're going to do is we're going to continue to invest in, tear down that old infrastructure that split communities, the tracks or the bridge that went straight through a black community that divided it. We're looking at racial equity in those forms too. So look, everything we do, the president's first executive order was on a whole of government approach and racial equity. And so everything we do through a lens of how does it affect black and brown people in this country. And so the Build Back Better plan has that throughout. So you're talking about kids 3 and 4 year olds going to school, not daycare, helping with child care, elder care. All of those things will have a humongous impact on the African American community. And two things, and I'll be real quick with these.
You don't have to be quick.
This is the first time any president has invested in community violence intervention. And that's fighting crime, not with police, but fighting crime with mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment, community violence interrupters, which means that's people from the neighborhood who are hired by the government to actually stop crime before it happens. Summer jobs, investing in recreation, doing all of those things that support the community and the family unit. So we're going to do community violence intervention, which I don't think anybody has done to the magnitude that we're going to do it. So those are the types of things that we're just keeping our head down and trying to get done.
Let's clear something up. What happened to the HBCU money?
Good question. I'm glad you asked. HBCUs generally get about $650 million a year from the federal government. $650 million, okay. We put in our 2022 budget $887 million for HBCUs. So we brought them up by about $240 million. But just this year, we've given HBCUs $4.2 billion, which is more money than they've ever received. It's probably more money than they've received in the last couple of years.
So HBCUs got that this year, $4.2 billion.
$4.2 billion.
Ain't nobody gonna get on Twitter and say you lying, right?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I will. Because they got $4.2 billion from us, and then they got another $500 million from the Department of Education. So it's really $4.7 billion.
Okay.
And
that's a flex.
And in Build Back Better, they're gonna get more money. And it'll start with a B and not an M. So we know how important HBCUs are. And you know why HBCUs are so important? Because they're getting students that come from public schools, some students who come from great schools, but they take the student, however they find them, and then they produce real stars out of these students. And so we have to support them. The vice president is an HBCU grad. I'm an HBCU grad. The administrator at EPA is a HBCU grad. So it's important to us, and we're going to keep funding HBCUs better than anybody has in history.
So if you said $4.9 billion, right?
4.7.
4.7 billion. Where did the miscommunication come from then?
Because when the president laid out Build Back Better, when it was going to be a $6 trillion bill, he said he wanted to put $40 billion into higher education, $20 billion of which could go to HBCUs over the next 10 years, so about $2 billion a year for the next 10 years. Well, the bill went from $6 trillion to $3.5 trillion, and now it's going to end up about $1.7 trillion. So yes, it took a haircut, but cutting HBCUs would be foolishness, and that's not us. And so we are still pushing to get as much as we can for HBCUs, and I think at the end of the day, HBCUs are going to be very happy because they're going to be able to invest in their facilities, their faculty, and their students.
Why are Democrats so bad at messaging, though, man? Because you're saying all of this good stuff that y'all doing, but we don't hear about it.
Well, that's why I'm here.
You got to do more than this.
People listen to you. So, look, just yesterday I did a call with the Divine Nine because they have such a big reach. And so now, we have enough accomplishments. We're working hard. So now I've committed that I'm going to keep doing shows and morning shows to make sure that we're getting out what we do because it's important. People have to understand that voting in an election has a consequence. And so when you start talking about reducing poverty in the black community by 38% in just a year, people need to know that's what we're doing.
When you hear President Biden say things like, this is the greatest threat to our democracy since the Civil War, how come y'all don't act like it?
Well, we do. And
really
so
you don't.
if you look at the Justice Department, they filed suit against Georgia for their attempts to suppress democracy, but also we doubled the size of the Department of Justice voting rights section so that they can continue to sue, because we know while it's blocked up in Congress, we're going to continue to act. So we have a three-pronged approach. We're going to meet them in the courts with the Department of Justice suing where they find unconstitutional stuff. We're going to meet them in Congress and try to pass this legislation. Then we're going to meet them on the street corner, and we've already put $25 million out to organize, educate around voting in case it doesn't happen. But it is not an option to not deliver on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and meaningful voter protection. That right is too sacred for us to be cavalier with.
Don't you think that, anybody that would block that would be considered unpatriotic, being that voting is the cornerstone of democracy?
Look, I think it's a horrible sign in this country that this is not a unanimous bill. When the last time we reauthorized the Voting Rights Act, it was unanimous in the Senate. And now they've bought into this big lie. They've bought into this madness of the last president, and the courage is just not there to do it. But we have to get this done.
Who doesn't have the courage?
The Republicans don't have the courage to buck Trump. You see him now talking about, oh, that wasn't an insurrection on January 6th. Well, I was in the building. I was there. It was an insurrection. They were not tourists. They were not visitors. They were criminals. And I think that the number is 600 so far have been charged. So, look, we're going to...
Well, some would say Democrats don't have the courage to buck Joe Manchin.
No, I mean, that doesn't get you anywhere.
What, calling him out?
Because
you have to let people know where the problem is.
Well, I think everybody knows that he's a lot more conservative than we want to be. He is far more conservative than we want to be.
Because people say, they'll say broad things like, oh, Democrats don't want progress. But really it's two, right?
Well,
maybe three.
There are two or three that are a little bit more conservative than we need them to be. But they did help us pass the $1.9 trillion rescue plan. They've been there. But we're going to have to keep pushing them to get there on, they're all there on voting now.
You think so?
Well, they're all there on 50 votes.
Okay.
So we're getting there, but, it's not easy. And I won't even come in and pretend that it is. But it is the constant effort of trying to bring people together to get something done. We're going to keep doing that. And, it's better to have Manchin there and be the 50th Democrat than for him to be the 51st Republican.
Well, he's well on his way.
So,
he's well on his way.
So we're working with him.
Okay, final question. How do Democrats expect black people to turn out in 2022 when two major issues, policing and voting rights, are being held up by those two or three Democrats who don't want to eliminate the filibuster?
Look, we're going to put pressure on them to reform the filibuster. We've talked about the talking filibuster, but at the same time, we're going to continue to act. We are not going to not make sure our communities are safe, which is why the Department of Justice acted so far on policing reform. And the other thing we did was criminal justice reform, too. We're not charging the harshest penalty anymore. We're charging the one that makes the most sense. And the president firmly believes that nobody should go to jail for substance abuse because it is a mental health condition. It is a health condition, not anything else. So we're gonna keep pushing those things. And it's day 281. We're not making excuses because we want to get this stuff done, and we want to get it done as quick as possible because elections are around the corner.
Yeah, and if those two things, don't get passed, once again, what's the point of voting if you don't see people addressing your issues and taking care of your issues?
We're going to address it from the White House and the executive branch, but Congress is going to act. We're going to make sure that we get something through Congress. We have to. It's too important.
How much confidence do you have in that, Cedric? Be honest.
I have confidence in it. I do.
Okay.
Like I told you, I would come back. I am proud of the administration. I'm proud of the stuff we've done so far. If you look at unemployment, if you look at wages going up, if you look at black poverty going down, if you look at the fact that we're not scared to do stuff in policing or voting or, nobody talks about the fact that, remember, we put $5 billion aside for black farmers who were discriminated against historically. Now, Trump's guys went and sued, and they blocked it in the courts. But we put $5 billion back in, Build Back Better, and we're going to try it a different way. But the goal is to right the wrongs of the Department of Agriculture and how they treated black farmers. So what we do with a lens on racial equity, and we're trying to do as much as we can, as fast as we can.
As a politician, you've been in the game how long? 20 what years?
23 years.
23 years. If none of this stuff happens, are you afraid that the death of democracy is upon us? What happens if, you know, the GOP gets control next year in the House?
The GOP gets control, it's going to be tough. Look, there's no secret that...
Define tough on a scale from 1 to slavery. Define tough.
I will tell you this. Upward mobility and rights of minorities would be in jeopardy. And the truth is the democracy could be at stake. This person tried to overturn an election.
That's
and I
right.
don't think people look at it. You know, this was a coup.
Yes.
And we're going to make sure that that never happens again.
Cedric, thank you for coming through, my brother.
Thanks for having me.
You're not going to be a stranger, right?
No.
Hey, you didn't think we would go there, but we did. Make sure to subscribe to the God's Honest Truth YouTube channel for more original content with yours truly, Charlamagne Tha God. Thank you. You are appreciated.